you the link to the presentation and to the video so that you can have it for reference. So the first part, so is this presentation, and then the second part will be we will take together the practice exam that is available on the website, so that we work together as a team, and the point is not that much about answering the questions and finding the right answer, but really understanding how the exam is and how you should approach it and make sure you're prepared for success on that. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so so getting certified, so it's very, very important. I will tell you a bit more. So we will do a focus today on the cloud architect. The presentation is both valid for architect and data engineers, but I will probably skip the data engineering part and focus really on the architect one. So the why of the certification is very, very important for two specific aspects. One is really to show your technical abilities on the Google Cloud Platform, and also as a partner, as Atos, to show your commitment on Google Cloud. What is important to understand is that the certification is technical, but what is super important is really that it's trying to put you in a consultancy mindset, and the goal is really to help your customers transform themselves to the cloud. So you will see that when we do the blank exam, a lot of questions are not necessarily easy to answer per se. So you can have multiple questions, multiple answers that may fit for a single question, and the context is something which is very, very important, and this is one of the key elements of the certifications. So how to get certified? So you know about that. There is an exam to pass. The exam is a way to measure your ability and the skills that you may have for the role. There are many resources available, and I will go through and I will share the presentation so you have it to make sure that you're ready. However, one thing which is very important is that it's also built on experience, and what is very important for us is that we have people that know about Google Cloud, but are also able to help customers in their journey to the cloud. So for the certification pass, so there are two kinds of certification, and there is a third one actually coming in. We will focus today on the Cloud Architect, and really the Cloud Architect certification is really to get an understanding of course, cloud architecture, Google technology, and then how you can design, develop, and manage solutions for your customer. And there is one aspect which is very important. This part of the sentence is to drive business objectives. It's very important because you'll see that a lot of the questions of the certification have a context, and the answer that you will give are driven by business objective in terms of cost efficiency, I don't know, high availability or things like that. So the technical things are really led by business drivers. So the journey, so obviously a lot of things are the things that you've already done, but we just to show you. So the first thing is about the trainings. So I guess you have all done the Coursera, and some of you have done this face-to-face training. This is very, very important. And the trainings for the Cloud Architect is, so there is one fundamental, which is a one-day training, just to give you an overview of the platform, and then two modules, architecting with GCP and reliable cloud infrastructure. These two modules are actually the one that you've been doing either face-to-face or with Coursera. There are quick labs also. So this is something that we may be able to give you at some point. So if you feel that you need some more hands-on experience, please come back to me and I can give you some quick labs so that you can further continue your training on the platform. One other thing is the case studies. So they are on the website. Let me show them to you. So the case studies are very, very important because, as I told you earlier, a lot of the questions would be based on these case studies, and actually being able to see them and understand them before can be interesting. So for example. So if you go to the certification part of the website, you will see that we have 4 case studies. And these case studies are actually the one that you will see during the certification process. And actually, if having a look at them can be very important because they are structured all the same way. So you have a basic overview of the company, their background, what they want to put in place, what they have today. Which is very important because that's technical elements of the platform. And after that, you will see the business and technical requirements. This is super critical because this is what will help you finding the right answer. And then after that, you have these statements by the CEO, CTO, and CFO. These are the elements which are the most critical in the case study because this is the way, once again, that you will find the proper answer, and this is the way that will drive you understanding what the customer is willing to achieve. One other element which is very, very important is the solution part on the cloud website. So the solutions are actually built by our solution architect teams. Let me show that to you. And this is very important because they are the best practices. So basically, if you want to do manage hybrid cloud, for example, they will provide you with a certain number of use cases and good practice to do that. And knowing about them is very important because you will see that in the exam, a lot of solutions that we ask can be inferred from that. So if I take an example around, for example, HPC, you will see that one example is preemptible VMs. So that's an architecture example. So burst from premises and so forth. So these things are very important because they give you an overview of what's the best practice and how to do it well, based on the experience that the solution architects have with existing customer on GCP. So it's very important to really to see that, especially in area that where you're not very familiar with. So if you have an infrastructure background, for example, I would suggest to look at create intelligence from data solutions because they can be a very good way of understanding all the elements fit within the platform. And then, so take the practice exam. So we will do that together. So the practice exam, the point is you may find some question from the real exam in the practice exam, or not, because we have a batch of questions and each test is actually showing different questions. However, it's a good way to reassure you that you have the good training level to go to the certification. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, which is important, is that one key element of the certification is to understand all the questions are asked and what's the subtleties behind. Especially for the non-English native speakers, there are a lot of subtleties in the exams. And this is what we'll be doing in the practice exam, is really to make sure that we understand the subtleties. However, so there is a caveat, which is important. It's not because you are successful at this practice exam that you will pass the certificate exam. However, it puts you in a good shape for the exam. So here you will see all the links to the different things that I've showed you. So obviously, I will share with you the presentation so you can have a look at them offline. In terms of areas of studies, that's the main element that you need to know for the architect. First, when do we use compute, like YAS or PAS or CAS? These are the things that will be asked. And there's no one good answer per se. It really depends on the context of the customer. So some customers, for example, and this is why the case study is important, some customer will want to go to containers, for example, but some others will not be ready for that. And so this is where you need to make sure that you see the context on this aspect. Same thing for storage. You will have a lot of questions on storage, and most of it, what kind of storage shall I use for my use case? So you need to understand which is the best database depending on the use case. So, for example, Cloud SQL is a great database, but it doesn't scale up to, I mean, if you have a database that goes more than 10 terabytes, it's probably not a good solution. Same thing for Spanner. Spanner is an excellent database, but if you have just 1 gig of storage, it doesn't make any sense to use that. So we don't ask you to know the exact limits. What is important is the use cases and get an idea of a sense of scale for each of these databases, because basically you don't use necessarily the database for the same result. And then there are a lot of questions about kind of disk, so SSD, local SSD, PD, and so forth, and snapshots. So we will see during the link, but you need to know that. Networking is, of course, very, very important because any project will go for networking. So really understanding how network works, what are the firewalls, how they work, and also another thing which is very important is the IAM. Make sure that you understand what are the roles you can apply to resources and projects and so forth. And lastly, stack drivers features, so debugger, monitoring, logging, tracing, and so forth. This is specific to GCP, but also, I mean, the cloud is built on also good practices. So management separation, resource isolation, separation of duties, and so forth. All the things that we do in traditional IT, of course, apply to cloud. So it's very important to do that. There will be parts around identity, because identity is also a key element of the access to the platform. So you need to know how identity solutions work within GCP and how they interact with them. The other thing is still about identity, but more on service identity. So what is a service account? How do they connect together? What's the best practice to you when you use service accounts? So basically, what are scopes and how they should work and so forth. And One other thing, if you have the time, is to read the Site Reliability Engineering book, which contains a lot of, so it's not really related to GCP, but you have a lot of good practices that are enforced in GCP. So it will be helpful for a series of questions, more on the DevOps side of it. So I will skip the data engineering. So more practical aspect on the exam. So the exam measure an individual ability to demonstrate the critical skills for the roles. I won't get further on that. It's of course need to be taken in person at one of our testing center location. So you can choose with our partner any test center that you want in the world. They have a lot of centers. It's a 50 multiple choice or multiple select question. So this is very important. Is that sometimes you will get multiple possible answers for a question, and these are the most trickiest question. Usually, when you just have one answer, one possible answer, it's really easy to figure out. When you have multiples, it can be complicated, specifically because if you, for example, if there are 3 possible answers and you give only two of them, you don't have any points for the questions. It's a 2-hour exam, and we don't talk about the registration fee. So for the registration, if you haven't done it, so you need to go to the certification part of the website on Google Cloud. You register, you take your the voucher that has been given to you to pass the certification, and you will be able to create your web assessor account if you need to. It's super important that you use your Atos.net domain email address to when you register yourself, because we actually need to know how many Atos people have been going through the certification. One other thing important is that be in advance. So basically, when you register for a session, the system will give you a time at which the exam starts. So be in advance, because sometimes there can be a lot of people for one slot. So be in advance just to make sure that you don't lose your spot. And important, you need to have 2 forms of IDs when you go to the exam, because they need to verify that. So some exam tips. It's a 2-hour exam, and time is not a constraint. The 2 hours are really enough to get through the exam. As a personal experience, so there is 50 questions, and I had time to go through 4 times all the questions, and I still have 15 minutes left at the end of the process. So time is an asset for you, so don't rush out. There's no point about rushing out. Take your time, pass multiple times through the questions. You have a lot of time to do that. There's no rush in that. The other thing is about experience, and this is why we don't ask questions like what is the exact number of IOPS on a local SSDs. This is not the point. The point is more how to understand how to position a product versus another, and this is really about experience. So case studies, we already discussed that. So take some time to read them. It's so that you have them in mind before going to the exam. It will give you a bit of reinsurance. And then for the process, you have 2 choices. Each question you can answer at them, and then you can either submit it or put them in review. so that when you're sure, you submit the question, and when you're unsure, you put it in review, and then you can review them later. So actually, one of the tips that I can give you, it worked for me, so maybe your mileage will vary, is that you do a first round of all the questions, and during this round, you actually go through all of them and try to answer as much as possible. Then you go to another round and you answer all the questions that you haven't been able to answer. And then a third round where you mark all the questions that you think you're not super sure of that, and you keep the last one for the final review at the end. Last point, think about the context. The context is always important. Usually what happens is that for each question, there are 4 answers. There's probably 2 of them that are completely irrelevant or even stupid. So you can get them out of the equation pretty quickly. And the 2 others are most of the time valid. And you need to understand the context to make the right choice. So this is why you need to really think about that and take your time. Okay, so this is all for the presentation. Do you have any question, feedback, anything you want to share before we start the blank exam?
One question. This is Prashant here.
Yeah.
Do we have any test exams? Because you told, okay, we'll be going through one. So do we have any, let's say I want to go ahead with the exam maybe after 1 week. So do we have any test cases or maybe a test exam where we can just go through it before going ahead with the final exams? Do you have any?
That's that's the one we will. That's the one we will be going through. And obviously, it's available from the website, so you can redo it after.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so if you're okay, we'll go and start the practice exam. So the idea for this practice exam, I will show the question and the answer, and then we can. So I will give you 1 or 2 minutes to think about the question, and then I will ask you to give me your answers, and we discuss together why or why not it's a good or not a good answer. Is it fine for you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we start with the first one. So I will read the question and I will let you then read the answers. So your company wants to reduce cost on infrequently accessed data by moving it to the cloud. The data will still be accessed approximately once a month to refresh historical charts. In addition, data older than 5 years is no longer needed. How would you store and manage the data?
AC.
Okay. So we have C, A. So there's a bunch of C's. Okay, so let's go for the answer. First of all, we can remove A and B. Why? Because multi-regional bucket is actually way too expensive for data that is very infrequently accessed. And then, so as I told you, we already can remove two of the questions based on the context. Then we have the two others which are stored in a nearline bucket. Okay, and then one of the answers say we need to delete the data older than 5 years, and the other one will be to change the storage class to code line for data older than 5 years. So nearline, actually, one thing which is said in the question is that data older than 5 years is no longer needed. So C is actually the right question, absolutely, because we can absolutely delete it. Nearline is expensive too. Depends on exactly. Thank you, guys. It depends what you compare it to, but to code line it is. To the standard, it's less expensive. Okay, let's go to the next question. Okay, so your company architecture is shown in the diagram. You want to keep data in sync, across region 1 and region 2. Which product should you use? Okay, what are your... everybody answered already. Anyone has a different option? A different opinion, sorry? Okay, so the answer is indeed cloud storage, which is not completely obvious. But if you look at the diagram, one thing which is important is the fact that we have something which spans multiple regions. And the only multiple region product that we have in this list is cloud storage. All the other ones are actually regional products or zonal products. Okay. So your company is building a large-scale web application. Each team is responsible for its own service component of the application and wants to manage its own individual projects. You want each service to communicate with each other over RFC 1918 address space. What should you do? Okay, so let's go through. So there seems to be a consensus around B, but let's go and understand and try to understand all the questions and the answers and if they fit. So the first answer is deploy each service into a single project within the same VPC. So it doesn't work because we want. It fits the part of the question, which is each team is responsible for its own service component and wants to manage its own individual project. However, you want each service to communicate with the other or over RFC 1918 doesn't work if you have a single, no, actually, sorry, complete, that's not the right thing. So it's a single project. So obviously, this is not what the teams want to do. So we can get rid of that. Configure shared VPC and add project as a service of the shared VPC project. So it fits both requirements, which is to have a series of projects, each team being responsible for its own project, and at the same time, this is what shared VPC does, is to offer AFC a 1919 address space. The C answer is actually not what we're looking for, because we don't talk about projects, and also we talk about HTTPS, which implies public HTTPS, so it doesn't work. And the last one is completely about public address space, and this is not something that that the customer wants. Okay. Next question. Your company collects and stores security camera footage in Google Cloud Storage. Within the first 30 days, footage is processed regularly for threat detection, object detection, trend analysis, and suspicious behavior detection. You want to minimize the cost of storing all the data. How should you store the video? Okay, so this is the typical questions where you need to understand the various elements and the implication of choosing one solution versus the other. So one key aspect of the question is that within the first 30 days, footage is processed regularly. So it means that we will have access to the data quite often. So it cannot be nearline because nearline is cheaper on the storage, but imposes a tax every time you read the data. So which make it not necessarily the best option. Then, so there is a consensus about using regional storage for the first 30 days, which makes sense. And then we have the ability to then move them to cold line, nearline, or persistent disk. So moving them to persistent disk doesn't make any sense because there's no speed difference between nearline. All the elements have actually the same performance. So basically, moving them to persistent disk doesn't make any sense. Yeah, because the cost would be prohibitive. So the question will say, so do we move to cold line and to nearline? And it's really about the cost efficiency here. And obviously, cold line is the cheapest solution, especially if you don't access them after that. Okay. So you are trying to deploy the Google Cloud Deployment Manager manifest shown below. The teams wants the instance group to scale to 3 instances, but only one is starting. You want the deployment to succeed, obviously. What should you do? So let me zoom a bit. And here are the answers. Sorry. Okay, up. So once again, so we can have a look at the answers. It's not a question of zones because there's no specific reasons that the zone will prevent from booting. The custom source image doesn't make a lot of sense either. Then we have the two last questions, which are the network interface and the second disk from the instance group template. So there's no specific reason why the network interface would cause problem. It's probably defined properly. However, if you look at the disk, the second disk specifically, you will see that the name of the disk is not parameterized based on the instance name. So what will happen is that when the system will boot the first instance, it will work because it will create a disk named deployment-app-disk. However, when the second machine will boot, it will try to create the same disk, and then it will fail because obviously you can have one disk attached to multiple VMs, but only if the disk is read-only, which is not the case here. Okay, next question. So your CI/CD pipeline process is shown in the diagram. Which service should you use in box 1, 2, and 3? So one thing which is very important for this kind of questions is actually to really process by elimination as you go forward, because sometimes it can be a bit tricky and it will help you a lot finding the right solution. We keep 10 seconds for the others. So in these questions, it's important to understand the best practices. Because yes, a developer could store his code on Google Cloud Storage. Is it a good idea to do so? Probably not. That's not a good practice. The good practice is to use a system like Git to store source code, so we can remove A and B out of the equation. So we have C and D then, and the question is we need to have a look at what we are trying to do. So basically, what is the option 2 is probably something that will automatically take the code from the source repository and create and store an image in the container registry. And obviously, Cloud Storage is not able to do that. Only a Cloud Container Builder can do. Is it clear? Yeah. Feel free to jump in and interrupt if you need more explanation or whatsoever. Okay, so you are running an application in Google App Engine that is serving production traffic. You want to deploy a risky but necessary change to the application. It could take down your service is not properly coded. During development of the application, you realize that it can be only properly tested by live user traffic. How would you test this feature? Okay, it is indeed D. Because all your the first one is not a good practice because it means that as the change is risky, there is a big chance that it takes down the system, and so either you won't have enough traffic to test your feature before you roll back, or you will affect a large part of the customer base. Create a second project with the new app in isolation and onboard new users is going to be super complicated, specifically because you have to redirect at some point users from one version to another, and there's nothing specified here on how to do that. So it can be DNS, for example, but DNS is not a good way to, if you want to roll back, it has some latency. And then same thing for the C answer, which actually, if you create a second App Engine service, you will rely on probably DNS to redirect a part of the traffic to one service or another. And once again, it imposes some latency if you need to roll back. Whereas the last thing is using a feature which is part of App Engine, and that works because it's able from the load balancing part to redirect the right amount of traffic where we want to, and it's automatic to do so. Okay. One of the microservices in your application has intermittent performance problem. You have not observed the problem when it occurs, but when it does, it triggers a particular burst of log lines. You want to debug a machine while the problem is occurring. What should you do? It's a tricky question. Okay, there seems to be a consensus around D, which is actually the right answer. A is not a good answer because you can you can have the problem in the middle of the night, and you don't want necessarily to have your guys waiting just logged on the machine until it happens. The B answer could be an answer. However, when you look at the question, it says you want to debug a machine while the problem is occurring, so that the B is really after the fact analysis, i.e., you have this pattern coming on a regular basis, and you are able to understand what the problem around could be, which is not what is asked. And the C part is actually a good answer also, but it's not really what your customer is asking, because he wants to go and debug on the machine, which is not what Stackdriver Trace is about. Stackdriver Trace will give you hints about what happens, but your code needs, for example, to have the proper information in it, and if it doesn't, it won't work. So it's D. which is really that. So you create a metric in Stackdriver so that whenever you receive a log line, you get information, and then you can create an alert based on the number of lines passing a specific threshold. Okay, so the next question is with the Dress4Win case study. So I will try to put that up to cast both. Let me check that. Give me 2 seconds while I just put my display properly. So just this the way I will display is actually the way that it will be shown on your screen. Oops. Sorry. Okay. So in the system, you will have two tabs. Two parts. Your screen will be split on two. One on the right, you will have the case study, and on the left, you will have the question and the answers. Okay. So for the question, for future phases, Dress4Win is looking at options to deploy data analytics to the Google Cloud. Which option, meets their business and technical requirements? Let me know if you want me to scroll, or I can reduce the size of this. Is it still readable for you guys, or?
Yeah.
I will send the link actually to the chat. It's probably going to be easier.
Yeah, I just opened the link on my computer.
Up. Okay, let's go. So this is a very tricky question because all answers are valid. There's no wrong answer, technically wrong answer. So you need to actually see and understand the customer context. So one thing which is, so this company background is really important. So it's a fast-growing company that is having now several hundreds of servers in the data center. However, their main pain point is that their capacity is not enough because of the application growth. The other thing is that they want to innovate faster, but it may not be the most important for that. So what they want to do also is that they want to move their development and test environment at first and build a disaster recovery solution on the cloud. So I will go through the technical environment. You probably have seen it, but in this context, what is really interesting is those two elements on Hadoop and Spark. And then we'll go to the business and technical requirements, and these are key to answer the question. So they want to be able to build a reliable and reproducible environment with scale parity of production, fine. Improve security, improve business agility and speed of innovation through rapid provisioning of new resource, analyze and optimize architecture for performance in the cloud. I won't go through all of them, but you see that all of these statements are important. So, if you look at that, the CTO one may be one of the most important one, and there also one other thing is that in the technical requirements, you have this, you have that for this context. So basically, when you look at that, it means that probably so the B1 is not a good option because it means that you need to migrate things. It's a good idea long term, but they have a short-term objective, which is not necessarily the best option for them. Same thing for C. It means that they need to be able to rewrite a large part of their jobs, which may be a good option, but still it's a rewrite and it's not compatible with what they want. And then you have two options, which is either deploy Spark Hadoop from a compute engine, so raw virtual machines, and then move the jobs, or use Dataproc. So we'll go for A. Why? Because of this sentence, use managed services whenever possible. So this, what makes the difference between A and D, which are really important. Okay, so these are the complex questions. And really, there might be a chance that we fail at this question, to be frank with you, because it's super tricky, okay? So, the destroying developers are evaluating using Google Cloud Platform. They have identified some applications that can easily move to Google App Engine flexible environment. The developer will deploy their code using the Google Cloud SDK tools. Which two of their stated technical requirements does this solution meet? And you need to choose two. Okay. So, I give you 10 more seconds. Okay. Okay, let's go. Question A, clearly this is not obvious. it's not one of the key elements that makes the difference. Use managed services as much as possible. Yes, because Google App Engine is a PaaS, so it's a fully managed service. So identify production service that can migrate to the cloud to save capacity. So it could be, but it's not, because there's nothing here that tells us about the fact that it's a production service that they want to move. So D, support failover of the production environment to the cloud during an emergency. Still not, because we don't know if it's production environment that they want to migrate to. And second, it's not super clear. I mean, it's not super clear, but still, they will probably need to rewrite part of their application for that. So it's not an entire move to the cloud. And it's not F, because we don't speak at any time about VPN in this. So by elimination, it's E. And this one is very, very tricky. So okay. So still on Dress4Win, the architecture diagram below shows an event-based processing pipeline that Dress4Win is building to label and compress user-uploaded images. Which GCP product should they use in boxes 1, 2, and 3? Okay, so the first thing is that if we look at that, we should infer what is the good solution. It's not an easy one, this one either, but what you see is that there is on the left, the user device is posting the image to something, and then this something generates an event, and this event is then processed through the stack. So it could be an App Engine as a front end. However, then data store and data flow doesn't make any sense on this specific element. So App Engine, so it could be App Engine, but then data flow here is a bit of an overkill for that, but still the last answer could be possible. So it keeps us with C and D. And it's probably C. Why? Because you put the data into cloud storage that generates an event in PubSub, and then you will use data flow to coordinate multiple parts. clearly, the D option, the last part of the D option could be also a good part. The one that doesn't work is that data flow. Data flow is not something that you will present to the end user. Okay. So Dress4Wins wants to do a penetration security testing on the test and development environment deployed to the cloud. The scanning should be performed from an end user's perspective as much as possible, or should they conduct the penetration testing? Okay, so going through the possible answers. So there is a consensus around D, and it's actually the right one. The first one is not a good answer because you don't need to notify Google when you do a penetration testing. So we can get rid of that. The second one, deploy the security scanner into the cloud environment and conduct penetration testing with each environment. It doesn't fit one of their requirements that it should be as much as possible performed from an end user perspective. And the C1 is exactly the same, for the same reason is invalid, because even if they deploy on-premise, they use a VPN to the services, which is not what they want to do. They want to do from a user perspective. So the good option is this one, because it will go through the internet and then it will simulate as much as possible user interaction. Okay, so your company. So let me just change the cast because I think we don't need the. Okay. We don't need the use case anymore. So your company architecture is shown in the diagram. You want to automatically and simultaneously deploy new code to each container engine cluster. Which method should you use? Okay, so there is already a number of questions that we can remove. The parallel SSH with Google Cloud Shell and kubectl is not a good practice, to say the least. So we can remove it. Then the D is also something we can remove. Why? Is that it's not because you use Container Builder to publish new images that actually they're going to be pushed automatically to GKE. Okay, you need to perform an action for that. So there's the A and B answer. The B answer can be removed, and this one is a bit tricky because yes, you could activate federated mode. That will probably help doing that. However, there's no way yet today to really do an automatic deployment across multiple clusters. So the best option is to use the automation tool such as Jenkins to create a pipeline to deploy the code. Okay, your company plans to migrate a multi-petabyte dataset to the cloud. The dataset must be available 24 hours a day. Your business analysts have experience only with using a SQL interface. How should you store the data and optimize it for ease of analysis? So the good answer is A. And I'll go through the wrong answer first. So stream data into Google Cloud Data Store, it doesn't really help, and especially the fact that Data Store does not support SQL, so we can remove it. Same thing for Cloud Storage. Cloud Storage does not support SQL, so we have BigQuery or Cloud SQL. And actually, BigQuery is the only database that supports multi-petabyte data. Cloud Storage usually Cloud SQL usually stop at 10 terabytes of data. You want to make a copy of a production Linux virtual machine in the US Central region. You want to manage and replace the copy easily if there are changes to the production virtual machine. You will deploy the copy as a new instance in a different project in the US East regions. What step must you take? Okay, the good answer is D. So the first answer, the A, DD and Netcat, is actually unpractical because it means that you need to, copying a root virtual machine with a disk running is not a practice for corruption purposes. And you will pay a lot of ingress cost in doing that. So create a snapshot of the root disk and select the snapshot of the root disk when you create a new virtual machine in the US East region. This is not the way the system works. For C, it's the same thing as A, or it's even more complicated because you need to create another disk with imagery. This is super complicated, and especially the fact that a disk is a zonal resource, so you cannot spread the cost. So the only one is D, because snapshots are global, and actually, no, select this. No, actually it's B. The answer is B.
Snapshots are global.
Snapshots are global. Using the image frame on this cat. Snapshots are globals. So basically, once you create a snapshot, you can re-instantiate it in another region. This one is tricky because you need to know a bit about that. I'm not 100% confident to be frank with you. Okay. So your customer is moving their storage product to Google Cloud Storage. The data contains personally identifiable information and sensitive customer information. What security strategy should you use for GCS? So we'll get the answer later. You may be right. Frankly, this is an area where sometimes it can be a bit tricky. Okay. Okay, so let's go through the possible answers. So A is not an option because basically, even if they are signed URLs, you will distribute information in the wild based on, and you don't have much control except the time bounding. So then the D1 is also a very bad idea because even if the bucket name and the object name are randomized, there are robots that scans buckets, and they, if they find something, they will be able to get access to that. So we have B and C. And I would lean for C because we want to make sure that we want to control, that's the principle of least privilege, we want to control who has access to the bucket so that we don't want to give users access to the GCP console. Of course, it doesn't make any sense. However, we want to give them access to one specific bucket. Okay, your customer is moving their corporate application to Google Cloud Platform. The security team wants detailed visibility of all projects in the organization. You provision the Google Cloud Resource Manager and set up yourself as the org admin. Which Google Cloud Identity and Access Management roles should you give to the security team? Okay, so once again, we'll try to. So here applies the principle of least privilege. So it means that we can take off C, and D doesn't make any sense because it means that you have to do it on every single project. So it doesn't make sense. So we have A and B is the right solution because actually the security people just want to see what's inside the project. So there's no point about making them a project owner. It's too much responsibility for them. Okay. So a recent software update to an e-commerce website running on Google Cloud has caused the website to crash for several hours. The CTO decides that all critical changes must now have a backout rollback plan. The website is deployed on hundreds of virtual machines with when critical changes are frequent. Which 2 actions should you take to implement the backout rollback plan? Yes, they are. For the sake of the exercise.
They're not working at Autos then.
Okay, I give you a bit more time for this one because it's a tricky one. There's 2 answers to give. Okay. Okay, let's go. So we can remove E because obviously creating a snapshot for each VM when you have hundreds of virtual machines is going to cost a fortune and it's going to be super complicated to put in place. A is also roughly the same thing, is that, okay, you create a new storage system onto Nearline. It's not necessarily super expensive, but still it means that you have to copy all the data and do that, and it's probably quite unpractical. So we have B, C, and D. So B is a good way to actually enable a backup solution, because what happens is that you will create versions on cloud storage and you will be able to roll back to a specific path. So it's not D. It could be D, but it's not. It's really C. And why it's C is that because you have the concept of managed instance group and the capability to launch a system where you can automatically update the instance and do it in a progressive way and be able then to roll back to the previous version of the instance group. But D could be an option. Okay. You need to reduce the impact of unplanned rollbacks of erroneous production deployment in your company's web hosting platform. Improvement to the QA processes accomplished 80% reduction. With additional 2 approaches, which additional 2 approaches can you take to further reduce the impact of rollbacks? Prochain truc de... Ah, ok. Okay, so then again, we go by eliminating some options. So D and E can be eliminated because removing dependencies or changing the database is not proper. I mean, is something which would be super complicated to do, and nothing tells us that the rest of the problem that the customer is facing is based on this relational. On this database problem. So we can probably remove D and E, and C also can be removed because it's a bad practice, especially when you put in place a QA process that was able to remove 80% of your problem to actually kill it after that. So it's A and B going for the two answers. And the last question. A lead software engineer tells you that his new application design use WebSockets and HTTP sessions that are not distributed across web servers. You want to help him ensure his application still run properly on Google Cloud Platform. What shall you do? Okay. So it's not A because nothing tells us in this scenario that you can help. You have the skills to actually help him redesign his code, and it's the same thing for D. So nothing can tell us that. And then the B is very unclear on this answer because it doesn't. Don't know exactly. So C is the option. It's also the option because one of the things, and it's probably easier for you guys, that we enforce is in this exam, in the certification, is about the capability to advise customers. And this is exactly what is about, is really to have people work together and understand what the consequences of that. Okay. So, up. So let's see how we did. So this one is good, this one is good, this one is good, this one is good, this one is good. Okay. I think we did pretty well, guys. This one.
Snapshot are not regional.
Yeah. And you were absolutely right. My mistake, you know. And then we are good. So one wrong answer. It's a good thing. So what I will do is that I will send you a capture of that. So you have as a reference also the explanations behind the answers, and you can it can be helpful for you moving forward. Now, if you have questions, comments, feedback, feel free to share with the group. I'll be super happy to answer them. Okay, if you don't have any more question, we will close the call. So thank you very much for your attendance. I will send you so the presentation, the recording of the meeting, plus the screen capture of the results, so that you have for all the questions the possible answer and also the reason why, which is I think super important to keep in mind, because it really helps understanding the scope and the thinking behind the exam. And I wish you good luck, because it's not an easy exam. We know it's pretty tough, but so good luck for it, and hope it will be a success for you guys. Have a good end of the afternoon and a good weekend. And once again, good luck for your exam. Bye bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Couper l'enregistrement.
Ah, ouais,
Quel débile.